welcome to Focus on B, the video series where I spent about 20 or so minutes playing and talking about a game that I've got some thoughts on. And you know the truth? I've never really had many strong opinions on the WipeOut games. And you know what that is? Well, that is because they are very, very punishing games, typically. However, I've actually really been enjoying the PSP entries. I used to play a lot of WipeOut Pure, and now I've been playing quite a bit of WipeOut Pulse, the sequel of sorts from 2007. And apart from the obvious things that make this really cool, the fact that we have such a polished, smooth, 60 FPS, buttery smooth racing game on a portable system released in 2005, not only that, but I've actually found that, okay, you're gonna have to oh wait, no, this game doesn't have a separate, like, a voice slider, so I'm just gonna have to deal with that. I found that this game is so much more approachable than any of the other Wipeouts. See, the Wipeout games are very difficult racing games because they move very quickly, and the controls are different from how they would be in any normal racing game. You have air brakes, you are a hovercraft, you're not a car, right? I'm not sure how exactly they were conceptualizing it in development, but when you pilot these things, you don't really feel necessarily like you're on four wheels and you look like you're floating. Because a lot of games will make that mistake where it's like, it's a hovercraft, except it's a car with no wheels. No, this is a hovercraft. It does not control like a lot of normal racing games. And that's generally a good thing, but it makes it really hard to play, at least well. But what's strange is that I've had very few issues, in fact almost no issues playing these two entries on the PSP. That might be for a few reasons. One, I swear the controls are just tighter and more responsive. That's one. Two, my only prior experience was the PlayStation 1 games. And those games, they were very awesome for their time, great sense of style, and great looks, especially the third game. But being on the PlayStation 1, there were two major issues. One, the performance, even though it was better than average, but still. And two, the visibility. I couldn't really see any fucking thing at all. Increasing the resolution helps, like I'm doing right now, obviously. But this is the PSP game, we kind of can't compare. If you're wondering why I'm not playing the PS2 port of this, because yes, this was around that time when PSP games were, a lot of them were ported to the PS2 just because it had a massive install base, and you know, why not? I imagine that, were they similar to program for? I actually doubt that, because one's a handheld, one's not, whatever. But the reason why I'm not playing that version is because I've seen comparisons. It seems to be one of those cases where they actually lost a lot of things in translation. So I think I'd rather play this version. It won't matter to you guys because it's going to look nice and run smooth regardless. So might as well be the better of the two versions. So I think the main reason why I've had a much easier time is just because this game is a bit slower. I swear to God, it's just a bit slower. Now usually that would be blasphemy. It's like, what? Decreasing the speed in a racing game? How fucking dare they? But look, man, when you're dealing with a game like WipeOut, and there's all these weapons and stuff, I find that vehicular combat games don't always benefit from being as fast as they can be. You know, for example, even stuff like FlatOut, like FlatOut 2, you are much better off using the lighter vehicles that have better handling, even if they're not necessarily faster, or using the heavier vehicles. The really fast but difficult to control vehicles are never the way to go in a game like that, unless I guess you're really good. You know, I mean, like there's the Flatmobile, which is a fucking meme, but still, that car's a joke. It's stupid fast and you can't really control it, but it is fun to mess around with. That's one of my favorite things to do in that game. Just load up a quick race with the Flatmobile and just fucking annihilate everyone, just ramming into them. It's really funny. But here, I feel that the way that, because of the combination of all these different systems, right? The physics system of the hovercrafts themselves, the weapon system, the energy and health system, I think it benefits from being just a tad slower. It's still fast enough that you get a sense of speed, and the game's engine is clearly capable of high speeds, as the zone game mode, which I might showcase a little bit later, purely demonstrates. Like, you can tell this game has no problem running very fast, but it knows when not to. Not to mention it's a handheld game, and those, they really shouldn't be quite as punishing because they need to be more fun in short bursts, and I imagine that they don't necessarily intend for you to play it for that long and try and like get that much better at it, even though it is good to have a bit of a learning curve. Also, I'm totally gonna fucking sneeze. No. Oh my god, okay. I think I'm not gonna sneeze. Anyway, and yes, I am playing on... Fuck. Nope, I'm not gonna sneeze. I am playing on easy mode. Now, why am I doing that? Well, because... For fuck's sake, come on, stop wanting to sneeze, you bastard. Oh, that's fun. Anyway, why am I playing on easy mode? Because there's the option. Like, seriously, I don't actually know if... No, I'm pretty sure I would have done it if there were the option. The rest of the WipeOut games, or at least the ones that I've played, as I said, I've only played WipeOut, 1, 2, and 3. I don't remember them having any difficulty modes. And even then, honestly, being games from the 90s, I imagine that even the easy mode would have been way too hard for me. That's just usually how it goes. But here, yeah, easy mode is not the easiest thing in the world, but it's forgiving. It's very forgiving. I mean, I got first place just about on that last race, so about while commentating, and not really being the most practiced at this game. I mean, new lap record, what, am I about to get gold? Actually, I believe the time trial mode... No, this is the time trial mode, which just wants you to get as good of a time as possible. There's a separate, I think it was called the speed zone mode, speed run mode, speed lap, I forgot what it was called, where you have to complete the most amount of laps in a certain amount of time, and your timer increases, but it never resets completely. Then you have the zone mode, which basically is a survival mode. Your ship will continuously accelerate to the point where it's basically uncontrollable, and the longer you survive, obviously the better you've done. So if you get really good at handling the crafts at very high speeds... What the fuck was that? You could do flippy flips in midair? I had no idea you could do flippy flips in midair. It's really cool. Yeah, the longer you survive, the better you do. And I think what I like about this particular incarnation of WipeOut is how the weapons don't seem to be quite as consequential. Now, what I found really interesting and odd is, see, in WipeOut Free, I remember there was a boost mechanic. But the thing about the boost is that it eats away at your health, right? It's a trade-off. So you can go a lot faster, but you might be more likely to die. Whereas... with this game, I can't seem to figure out how to do the boost. I don't think the boost is a mechanic at all in this game. And that might be a reason as to why I find this game a lot less difficult. Probably because it's not balanced around skillful use of the boost. Because I imagine that when the developers were playtesting the previous games, they were treating the boost like a big make or break. You know, like you being able to use it effectively would determine whether or not you would win. Make the wrong calls and you're just not winning. But since there's no boost mechanic at all in this game, from what I can tell, things are a lot simpler, a lot easier. I can just kind of jump in and just have a good time. And I feel like it makes a lot of sense for the portable format of this game. But at the same time, I just find it to be more enjoyable in general. You know what else I really like about this game? And it's kind of separate from the fact that it's a PSP title, but it's fucking gorgeous. I know I'm upscaling it, sure, but I mean... an ugly game at a high resolution is still an ugly game, but this game looks amazing. The particle effects, the lighting, the overall art direction. I mean, the WipeOut games have always had fantastic art direction. That's just a fact. But here it's like, oh my god, it really comes to life. And if you really think about it, this was the highest fidelity WipeOut you had ever seen at that point. There was WipeOut Fusion for the PS2. Well, that came at a very different art style from what I could tell. I've never played it, but I've seen quite a bit of it, and it seems to go for a slightly chunkier, kind of bulkier style for some reason, for some of the hovercrafts. Here it goes back to that classic look, and wow, it's really nice. I think... Wait, hold on. Was WipeOut HD, the one for the PS3, before or after this? Because if it was before this, then yeah, sure. That would have been the highest quality Wipeout at the time. But seeing as this came out a year after the PS3, I think it might have... WipeOut HD might have come out after. I'm not entirely sure. For some reason, the year 2008 is in my head. It's like, that's when it came out? Is that when it came out? I don't know. I haven't looked it up. I know this was 2007, and the previous game was 2005. This is... I feel like both WipeOut and Ridge Racer have this thing in common. Well, apart from being essentially non-existent anymore and only kind of lingering in memory via either sudden callbacks, like subtle callbacks by the studios, or a lot of games that are clearly inspired by those original series that... You know, like, for example, this game, like WipeOut, has this PC equivalent game that was released recently called... I don't know. It was like was it Beam something? For some reason, its name reminds me of Beam NG, you know, Beam NG Drive, but I'm pretty sure that's not it. But whatever it was, there is this semi-recent Wipeout style game. I'm not talking about Redout, by the way. Yes, Redout is also a very Wipeout-esque game, but that one has... It's basically like a modern Wipeout, as in it's trying to push the graphical envelope. It looks amazing, and it's clearly going for a much more contemporary look, whereas the one I'm thinking of right now, that I can't remember the name, that one goes for a modern retro look, as in it's like high resolution 16 by 9, but it's not super high poly and very bright and colorful and stuff like that, because as we all know, the concept of color died in the early 2000s. just kidding. But yeah, what was I talking about? Other than that, though, I do love how this game has a sort of... The presentation is a lot brighter and more colorful, but it still has a little hint of dystopia. It's still cool, though, very Tron-esque, but not cringeworthy. And the bloom actually makes sense. There's a lot of bloom on the screen, as you can clearly see right now, but it's not too much. It's not totally intrusive. And this is the zone mode that I was talking about earlier. As you can see, my craft is just going to keep going faster and faster and faster until I can't take it anymore. And this is a really cool concept just because, well, for one, it's not just a traditional race, even though I do love me just traditional races, you know? In fact... does this game offer the ability to disable weapons? Because low-key, I would kind of just really like to do that. Even though I know to a lot of people it's like, what? But that's like the essence of Wipeout. Yeah, I get it. I've never been the biggest fan of vehicular combat games. I don't know, my taste in racing games is like super specific. It's like, you'd think that, oh, that means you love simulators. Well, no, I actually don't. Yes, simulators typically are very no-nonsense, but actually no. I love a good arcade racer that doesn't go too far in any one of two directions. I think that's why, for as normie as it sounds, because it is still a pretty successful series, I've always loved the Need for Speed games, barring a couple exceptions. Because I find a really good balance between those aspects. It's like they're kind of grounded, but they still have wackiness to them at times. Some are a little more, some a little less. Like Porsche Unleashed is very sim-esque. Shift 1 and 2 as well. The Run is kind of like an action movie, but the driving is actually quite grounded. Then you have games like Nitro that are just like, what the fuck, it's Mario Kart, right? Ah, shit, okay, we've reached a point where I'm going to start bumper carring off of walls, because, again, it gets so fast that you can barely take it. And that's really fun, though, because you really do want to see just how much you can push not just the game itself, but yourself as well. Besides all of that, though, besides the presentation, besides the music that you're not going to hear much of, I haven't completely disabled the music because I do feel like it's a big part of the game's presentation, but I have turned it down quite a bit because I don't want to get fucked by copyright, obviously, because I do believe the music in these games is licensed, right? Well, that's actually what made the original stand out so much, because they appeal to that sort of mid-90s club culture sort of thing going on, which I always found really interesting, like trying to exploit general popular culture in order to increase the appeal of a video game. And I think it's very smart. That really did play a part into the game's success, honestly, because the original Wipeout games are fucking punishing. Like, if they started like this game, then I feel like maybe it would still be around, because more people would have continued to like it. Because the thing about the early Wipeout games is that they're fucking hard. This really isn't all that hard. Honestly, I mean, yeah, I'm not playing super great, but the game's still gonna let me slide. Like, look, I mean, I can literally just fucking kill myself right now, and I'm pretty sure I would still end up getting a gold medal, I think. And it's primarily because the game is quite lenient on the easy difficulty. And I imagine that maybe people who played the earlier games maybe didn't give later games a shot. They didn't sell as well because they might remember getting really frustrated with the earlier games. That's a possibility. I mean, really, we haven't had a new Wipeout thing since... What was the last Wipeout game? Was it Omega Collection for the PS4, which is now 10 years old? Or has there been anything since? I'm not exactly sure, but regardless, though, clearly the legacy of Wipeout is not dead, right? There's plenty of people who are going to keep these kind of games alive by making games that are similar, of course, just like with Roll Cage, this really cool game called Grip. I've heard it criticized a little bit, but still, it seems to overall be quite a solid successor to it. And it's always fun to see games that are blatant, just, you know, obvious spiritual successors to earlier games which never really got the amount of success they really deserved, and recreating them, you know, because the thing is, nowadays, one person can make a game that would have taken 20 people to make back in like the mid to late 90s, right? And achieve better results just because of how accessible game engines have gotten, right? Like the games that I've made are the kind of shit that probably took teams of people back in the mid to late 80s, probably, you know? It would take me, oh fuck, it would take me a little more effort to make something more akin to the late 90s or whatever, but you know, one thing at a time. It's always fun how you always feel like you're kind of catching up to history, but regardless of that though, let's get on with some more of this game, because oh, what the fuck, how many... Oh, you can hold the button down. Yeah, you get these loyalty points. I'm still not sure what exactly that entails. Maybe you unlock more benefits for sticking to that particular brand, because yes, well, this is one of those fictional racing games that will have... Is there any more single... No, I guess not. Okay, we're just doing another... I'm just going to use this ship because I like it. I don't care. It's one of those fictional racing games that actually has like their own fictional brands and teams as well. I've always been a big fan of that because it really makes the world feel a lot more fleshed out. Wait a second, I've already done this. Well, no, I haven't done this particular event because this is the speed lap event. As you can see, it's not a time trial. I have 7 laps, not just free. And I think the goal here is to basically complete as many of them as you can before your time runs out, which occasionally replenishes... Well, not occasionally, but just every lap it replenishes. So if I can make it to the end of this fucking lap, you suck. You suck. Oh my god, wait, what's gonna happen? Am I just gonna... Oh, I see. That's how it works. Okay, did you see that right there? That thing in the corner where it says gold, it went down to silver and then bronze. So that's how it works. So you've got basically required times to achieve... Wait a second, does that mean that I have to basically get gold on every single lap? Or is it just a matter of getting that one really good lap? I'm not sure how it works. Honestly, I don't really... The game does do a pretty good job of teaching you these things, though. Not necessarily through the gameplay, but rather through the tutorials or the menus. There's a lot of menu... Like, there's literally like a game manual. In fact, I'm pretty sure... Yes, look. Game manual. So you can just go in and check out like the event types. Let's see. Let's do some reading together. Speed lap. Focus all your efforts into tearing up the tracks and beating the single best lap time in a solo event. You'll be given a free turbo pickup once per lap. And you also get free energy. So that's how it works. So how is it that different from regular time trials then? Because isn't that the... No, maybe in time trials you're supposed to beat like free... Let me see. Let's find out. Let's go in. Time trial, beat the clock in a solo race, time every speed boost to perfection, and make every corner count. You will be given a free turbo pickup. Your energy will also recover. Okay, so I guess in those ones, they differ by having you try and get the best overall time for the free laps in total. Why did I do that? That's right, I forgot to mention, this is a mechanic in the WipeOut games. You can sacrifice your items for health, essentially, for energy. Except it's really fun when you accidentally do that instead of actually utilizing the thing you were supposed to use. Let's try and get a really good lap this time, alright? So we're just going to take these corners, and as you can see, I'm still having a fairly good time. I'm not struggling too badly to try and take these corners. I would be fucking dying in any of the other WipeOut games. So I'm convinced that they have simplified the handling, but not in a way that feels patronizing, right? There's always a very fine line you have to walk when you're simplifying your game. Because on one hand, you don't want to make it too easy and make it seem like you're treating your consumers like complete idiots. But you don't also want to leave it completely the same and maybe risk making it too alienating for certain people, right? I was actually getting at this earlier before I got distracted again, because I got distracted very easily. Because really, these these videos are essentially just the ramblings of ADHD incarnate. But anyway, when I was talking about the similarities between WipeOut and Ridge Racer, again, I was talking primarily not about their legacies, even though they're kind of similar in a way, but also the fact that, well, no, except that Ridge Racer died because of kind of a shitty entry by a different developer that otherwise makes really good games, Bugbear. But anyway, it's very interesting how they have this thing in common where the games that are probably arguably the best for your buck, like the best bang for your buck, are the handheld spin-offs. Like really, WipeOut, Pulse, and Pure are excellent games for what they are, and they offer a lot of really good content. And Ridge Racers, I think it was like Ridge Racers rather than Ridge Racer, singular. Ridge Racers 1 and 2 on the PSP, they also offer just a giant buffet of the best of everything Ridge Racer with a coat of modern polish. Well, modern for when those games were released. And they were released in very similar time spans as well. Both racing games, both very arcade, but both very different. Because this game is arcade, but it almost feels like a simulator because of how punishing and difficult it can be. Not necessarily all the time, but it can be. Let's see, what did I achieve? Oh, this is one of those games where you can pause it after you've won. Gold medal, let's go. Well, you know what? We're gonna run overtime if I do. So, I think that's going to do it for this episode. Yeah, it always surprised me how much I can enjoy a game that is part of a series that I typically would not be super interested in, right? I've never really cared for the WipeOut games. I've liked their sense of style, always, but sometimes that's not enough for me to want to play them for a decent amount of time. But with this game, well, I haven't sunk too much time, as you can see, into Pulse, this one in particular, but I have played a lot of Pure, and I'm just kind of making the transition over to Pulse because it is the successor. So that's going to do it for Focus on B, the video series where I've spent about 20 or so minutes playing and talking about a game that I've got some thoughts on, and this is WipeOut Pulse. Actually had a really great time with this game. WipeOut Pulse, 2007, PSP.